And thank you, ladies and gentlemen across the Louisiana Plain. Welcome to our platform today, where we are advancing the cause of constitutional conservatism, elevating candidates and issues that are important to Louisiana citizens, and slowly but surely, day by day, draining the Louisiana swamp and beyond. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by Louisiana First citizens like you. Hello, State of Freedom family. Thank you for letting us join you for a few minutes and be part of your day. You are the absolute best team that we could ask or hope for. We are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. And if you are trying to get your friends or family members to subscribe, we are on pretty much every podcast platform, including YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And today I'm so thrilled. We have a very special guest joining us. He is a fierce warrior for truth and fairness. Dr. Robert Epstein has been working to expose the extremely outsized influence and control that Google has over the flow of information worldwide. Before we talk to Dr. Epstein, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Psalm chapter 41, verses 10 through 14. And it says, "So Lord, please don't desert me when I need you. Give me grace and get me back on my feet so I can triumph over them all. Then I'll know you're pleased with me when you allow me to taste victory over all my foes. Now stand up for me and don't let me fall, for I've walked with integrity. Keep me before your face forever. Everyone praise the Lord God of Israel, always and forever, for he is from eternity past and will remain for the eternity to come. That's the way it will be forever. Faithful is our King. Amen." And this passage is a reminder that even the bravest and fiercest warriors have moments of struggle and need. And it's okay to show our weakness to the Lord. He's the one who wants our total honesty, and he's the one who can handle our total honesty. He meets us right where we are. He meets us in our need, and he's the one who will give us the strength and the grace to keep fighting. It's in his presence that we find our strength and our purpose. So that's right where we need to be.
And you mentioned in the scripture, Danielle, that's so beautiful, walking with integrity. You know, when I read about the guest we have today, Dr. Robert Epstein, I think about just a man who walks with integrity, someone who is not really conservative. In fact, someone who's more liberal, but looks at what's going on with this sort of monopoly that Google has on the flow of information, and felt called to do something about it. And boy, has he. Dr. Robert Epstein, what a pleasure to have you with us today, sir. How are you?
A little bit tired. I've been traveling almost every day lately, and actually this evening I'm going to get on an overnight flight, and I'm going to Mar-a-Lago, which I've never been to before, but I was invited to attend an event there. So I'm going to be flying on a red eye cross country again. I just came in last night, and I'm leaving again tonight to go to Mar-a-Lago, which I think will be quite interesting.
That's incredible. Well, very best wishes for you, and I hope you have no travel issues whatsoever. Dr. Epstein, tell us how you got your start in this research in 2014. And we know that some of your research led you to tackle how Google was impacting nationwide elections. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, sure. Actually, things really started on New Year's Day in 2012. I got a bunch of emails. I think there might have been 8 of them coming from Google saying that my website had been hacked and they were blocking access. So that got me kind of curious. I've been a programmer since I was 13, and I was curious. First of all, who made Google the sheriff, of the whole internet? Why were they contacting me instead of some government agency or nonprofit organization? And then I couldn't figure out also how they were doing the blocking. That was kind of strange because I understood they could block me through their search engine, which is of course, the Google search engine. But they were also blocking me through Safari, which is an Apple browser, through Firefox, which is owned by a nonprofit organization, And I just started to get more curious about Google. So it started that way. But by the end of that year, 2012, I was noticing research showing how important the position of your search result is in Google search results. This was marketing research. Basically, companies will do anything to go up another notch because that can lead to a 35% increase in clicks if you just can go up one more notch. And
Wow.
you've got to get onto that first page or your company will probably fail. And 50% of all clicks go to the top two search items. Tremendous trust in those top search items. So again, as a researcher, longtime researcher, I started to get very curious about search results. And I wondered, well, if people are so trusting of these high search results, and that's where they click almost all the time, could I use search results or could Google use search results to shift people's opinions, maybe their beliefs, maybe even their votes? And then I started doing my thing in early 2013. My thing is to do research, to run controlled experiments. And I thought I could probably, in an experiments, I could show that maybe with biased search results, biased toward one candidate or another, I could shift voting preferences maybe by 2 or 3%, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was stunned because the first experiment that we ran, and this is an experiment where people are randomly assigned to one group or another, and one group, the biased search results are favoring one candidate, another group they're favoring uh, the opposing candidate, third group is a control group, they're not favoring either candidate. So in other words, the idea was, could we push people either direction? And we didn't get a shift of 2 or 3%. We got a shift of something like 43%, which I thought was
Wow.
a mistake. You know, be,
Yeah.
so we did what scientists do. We repeated the experiment with a new group. And these were not college sophomores, by the way. This is a group of people who looked like the American voter, in terms of age and income. And we got a shift of something like 66%, even higher. And then as we continued to repeat this and experiment in different ways, we realized we could not only use biased search results to shift opinions and voting preferences, but that when we did this, people were unaware that they were being manipulated. They were unaware that they were seeing biased search results. We did a big national study that year with more than 2,000 people in all 50 states. And there we had such a large group that we actually could find a few people, about 8% of them, who did notice the bias. And those people shifted even farther in the direction of the bias.
How do you account for that?
Well, I think it shows that people have such trust of algorithms and computer output because they have no idea what that is. They think that such output is inherently impartial and objective. So if they see the bias, they say, "Oh, this candidate must be better because the algorithm, the company, the computer is favoring this candidate. This candidate must be better." So this was so disturbing because it meant that even if you could see the bias, that doesn't protect you from the bias. So what we were looking at was one of the most powerful kinds of influence or manipulation, if you will, ever discovered in the behavioral sciences in 100 years. And we published this big study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015. And that was just the beginning, believe it or not. That was just the beginning. That study had more than 4,000 people in it in 2 countries, and the results were very clear. They've been replicated over and over again since then. This is real. This is real. And we later learned from leaks from the company that people at Google, they're well aware of this power they have. And over the years, we've learned how to determine what they're actually doing. In other words, it's one thing to say they have this power, but quite another to say, well, are they doing it? And it was actually a phone call I got in 2015 from Jim Hood, who at that time was Attorney General of Mississippi, and one of your nearby states. He was running for re-election as Attorney General. He was very concerned that Google was going to interfere with his election, his re-election. So he asked me about that. I said, yes, Google can do that. I explained how. And then he said, but how would you know? And that put this idea in my head, because at the time I had no answer for him, but that put this idea in my head that how would we know? In other words, how could we monitor them? How could we surveil them the way they surveil us and our kids 24 hours a day? And 2016, before the presidential election, my team and I developed the world's first monitoring system, which we're now calling a digital shield, but a way of seeing what actual content they are sending to real voters and more recently to real children. And we started collecting evidence, serious evidence showing that Google's actually using these techniques. That was later confirmed by whistleblowers and leaks from the company. So, this thing has just grown and grown and grown because this is real large scale manipulation affecting more than 5 billion people around the world. It's not just Americans, and it's not just our elections and our children. They are determined to spread their values, which I happen to share, but that's beside the point. I don't like the fact that a private company that's not accountable to us, that's not part of our republic, it's not part of our democracy, is taking control of our elections. I don't care, how good their values are. I don't care what their motivations are. I don't want a private company having that power because that turns a democracy into an illusion. And that's where we are right now. In this country, whether you know it or not, they can shift so many votes. I can give you the numbers if you like, but they can shift so many votes that at the moment, our democracy is an illusion.
Dr. Epstein, is it true that Google controls 93% of search engines throughout the world and can manipulate basically 93% of all search results? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, it's 93, 92, or 93% of search around the world is conducted on the Google search engine, and it's everywhere outside of mainland China. So that's a lot of people. And to give you an idea how much power that is, the next most popular search engine gets about 2% of search. So it has no real impact on anything. It's so to talk about a monopoly, there's never been a monopoly this big in the history of our planet. Never, never. And they're using this power, as far as we can tell, around the world. I mean, this is stuff out of a scary kind of movie. And the problem is, it's real. I've been doing this research now for more than 11 years, and over and over and over again, including around 2 weeks ago, we had another breakthrough in our research. We are discovering more and more about the power that they have and evidence that they're using this power. And we've been developing ways to try to stop them as best we can.
Wow. Well, Dr. Epstein, we are in the middle of an election season here in Louisiana. Chris and I have been very involved in that. And I would love for you to dig in a little bit more and tell us about some of your findings on the national scale with the impact that Google's had on the elections. And I'd also love to know, have you seen any impact, or has Google been playing in local and statewide elections as well?
Well, before I comment on that, since you're asking about elections, state and national, I do want to give a shout out to your incoming governor, Jeff Landry, who's been your attorney general for a long time, because General Landry has been a real friend to my work for a long time, kind of behind the scenes. And I actually texted him the day he was elected governor, which was just a few days ago, really. And I said to him, "Does this mean I'll never hear from you again now that you're going to be governor?" And of course, I never expected to hear back because he must have gotten thousands of messages on, on that day, congratulating him. And he texted right back, and he said, "No, no, no. We need to continue working together. I'll be able to help you even more as governor."
That's
That's
awesome.
so encouraging.
I got to say that to you and to your audience, that Jeff Landry has been a real friend to my work. In other words, he's one of those people. He's one of those rare people who became aware of the big tech problem years ago. We go back at least 5 years, maybe 6 years, and he became aware of this problem early on. And he gets it. He understands it. He knows how big this threat is, which brings me to your question. We now are collecting so much data. We're collecting data now from the computers with their permission, of more than 12,000 registered voters in all 50 states, including Louisiana. And we're building this system bigger and bigger every single day. And we have the ability to monitor not just national elections, but state and local elections as well. Now, there's some states which have approached us, to get some extra support in their states. So there are a couple of states where we have, very extensive coverage. Other states less coverage, but we're building the system as fast as we can. And we believe that this system, capturing all kinds of content that the tech companies are sending to real voters and, in fact, to real children, we believe that this is the key to stopping them. Because in 2020, so this is not just my imagination, in 2020, we had so much data regarding the national election in 2020 and the number of votes Google was shifting, that I got concerned, and I actually sent off a lot of our data to Senator Ted Cruz's office. And on November 5th, 2020, 2 days after the presidential election, Senator Cruz and two other senators sent a very threatening letter to the CEO of Google, 2 pages long, and summarizing my research findings. People can actually look at the real letter on the stationery from the Senate, the U.S. Senate, by going to lettertogoogleceo.com. Lettertogoogleceo.com. And you'll see the actual letter that they sent. It's very, very strong. The point is, on that same day, November 5th, 2020, Google shut off all of its election manipulations in Georgia, which was gearing up to have 2 Senate runoff elections. I don't know if you remember that. And Google shut off all of its manipulations. How do we know that? Because we had more than 1,000 field agents in Georgia. We preserved more than 1 million ephemeral experiences in Georgia. I can explain what that means. The point is, we were monitoring very extensively in Georgia, and we saw Google turn off its manipulations, turn off the bias in their search results. It literally went to 0, which we'd never seen before. More importantly, they turned off their partisan go vote reminders. Google sends go vote reminders to people. They send register to vote reminders. They send reminders to mail in your ballot, but they do it in a partisan fashion. Now imagine the power of doing that, of sending those messages mainly to members of one party.
So how do they do that? Because they know your search history, they know what you are inclined to believe and whether they want to send you a reminder or not?
They know everything about you. If you've been using the internet for 20 years, they have the equivalent of more than 3 million pages of information about you. They know more about you than you know about yourself. They
That's so
know,
sick.
sure, they know who's going to vote, who's not going to vote, and they know how they're going to vote. And more importantly, they know who's undecided, who's on the fence, who they can influence. And they use all kinds of techniques, which we've been studying now for a long time, all kinds of techniques which we've discovered. We've had to name the techniques because this is all new stuff. We've quantified the power of these techniques. And they used these techniques to shift millions of votes in our elections. But the point is, on November 5th, 2020, we got them to stop. And I think that's the key here. I don't think our legislators and regulators are going to get their act together. I don't think that they're actually going to make much difference, and that they're going to stop Google and other companies from these kinds of manipulations. But I think that a big monitoring system, a big permanent monitoring system that's running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, I think that will stop them, because they will know that every single thing they're doing is being preserved. It's being captured. It's being analyzed, and it's being archived, which means that authorities can go back in time and find out what content they were sending to people. And we're talking about, serious fines, serious criminal charges potentially. So this kind of system, in my opinion, is not optional for America. You have to have this to take away this terrible source of influence, to level the playing field, make sure we have free and fair elections. And so that's why I work on this so hard with a group of almost 50 people. It's important. It's extremely important. We have to do this.
Dr. Epstein, the thing that I find so alarming about this is that most of the people who get on Google and search for information about candidates or issues or any number of things, they don't even know that the search results are being manipulated. They think they're getting objective, free flowing information when they're not. And even the ones who recognize that there are built in algorithms here and that their search results are manipulated, nonetheless comply, nonetheless act in accordance with what they see on Google. So I just find it that so alarming. What is the solution? I know that you've got a database that you're capturing information that you can show in real time how drastically information is being censored and manipulated. As far as legally, what would be in court if you were to testify in court on this? Because it looks like ultimately it's probably going to end up there and there'll be a judicial resolution of some sort. What would be the relief or the legal remedy that you would be seeking in legal terms, the quote, cause of action against Google if this were to proceed to court and you were to testify as an expert?
Well, it's not just court. We are actually working with a very prominent lawyer in Washington, D.C. right now. He used to work for the Federal Election Commission. And we're preparing a formal complaint against Google for election manipulation in the 2022 midterms, because we have so much data proving this beyond the shadow of a doubt. We preserved 2.5 million ephemeral experiences in 2022. I guess I still need to explain what ephemeral experiences are. But you're asking about the court part of this. The court part of this, let me explain it this way. Last year, you may remember this, it was in the news. The Republican Party sued Google before the midterm elections, because Google, our friend Google, was diverting tens of millions of emails that the Republican Party was sending to its constituents, diverting those emails into people's spam boxes.
That's
So,
right.
and yeah, and talk about arrogance. Talk about arrogance.
That takes it to a whole new level. That just takes it to another level.
Of course it does. And it's also a reminder, by the way, for people who are using Gmail, which you positively should stop using today, that Gmail is not like the U.S. Post Office. Gmail has no obligation to deliver mail. It's completely unregulated. It can suppress messages. It can change messages. It can delete messages. It can put them in spam boxes. And it can cut people off from their Gmail accounts. Google does that to people every day. Thousands and
Wow.
thousands of people. They just cut them off. Say you've violated some policy or other. They did this to Dr. Jordan Peterson, and they do this to people every single day. And when they do that, when they cut you off from your your email, think about that. You might have tens of thousands of emails to friends and family members. When they cut you off, all right, point is, Republican Party sues Google, and it got thrown out of court almost immediately because they didn't have enough evidence. But you see, with a monitoring system in place, a nationwide monitoring system, large scale and permanent, okay, we can monitor anything, and we can monitor diverting of emails. And now you've got evidence that's court admissible. And the system that we are building now, it's pretty big, but it needs to be much bigger so that our evidence is admissible in court in all 50 states. So right now we have field agents in all 50 states, but we've reached our certain minimum thresholds that we need for court in 10 of those states so far. So the system needs to be much bigger. I want to give out a link if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Okay, it's mygoogleresearch.com, and we just started a national campaign asking Americans to support our field agents. Now, our field agents are registered voters in all 50 states, politically balanced. We only pay them $25 a month. That's it, to give us access to their computers so we can monitor the content that's coming into those computers. Now, why do we have these people? Because the only way to find out what Google and other companies are sending to people is you have to look over the shoulders of real people, and you have to hide their identities from Google. And now you'll see what they're sending to real people. You have to look at real people because they personalize content. There's no other way you're going to see. By the way, since we know the political leaning of our field agents, we can see whether they're sending the same content or maybe different content to Democrats and Republicans and moderates. And again, over and over again, every single day now, we are just finding such disturbing data because these people are arrogant, and they think they're gods. And we know from leaks that, in fact, they have an agenda to re-engineer humanity. It sounds like I'm making this up, but it's the truth. There's an 8-minute video leaked from Google called "The Selfish Ledger," which is all about their ability to re-engineer humanity according to, and I quote, Google's values.
Wow. That's just absolutely startling to hear. It truly is. And Dr. Epstein's your concerns here and our concerns, as you indicated, are not theoretical. Talk for a couple of minutes about the elections and look at 2016. What influence did this type of algorithmic manipulation in search results on Google have in the 2020 election?
Well, let me go back quickly, first of all, to 2016, because that's when we set up our first small monitoring system. We found a pro-Hillary Clinton bias in all 10 search positions on the first page of search results, but not on Bing or Yahoo. So that's important for comparison purposes. Now, Bing and Yahoo don't have any impact on elections because so few people use them. But on Google, there was extreme and significant bias. If that level of bias had been present nationwide, that would have shifted between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes to Hillary Clinton in that election, with no one aware that this was occurring. And except for the little bit of monitoring that we were doing back then, with no paper trail, no evidence whatsoever that they had done anything. But we were monitoring at that point, since we were just figuring out how to build systems like this, through the computers of 95 registered voters in 24 states. So those were our field agents at the time. And again, it was kind of a proof of concept. It was showing that, yes, you can. There are ways to see what content they're sending to real voters. 2018, we built a somewhat larger system. Again, we found significant bias, again, in one direction only. I mean, 96% of donations from Google go to Democrats. So
Right.
tells you something right there. 2020, we really had a breakthrough, and we didn't have 95 field agents. We had in 2020, I think, more than 1,700 field agents, mainly in 4 swing states. We went to swing states in particular because we knew that's where the real action would be. And we preserved more than 1.5 million ephemeral experiences on Google and other platforms. In 2020, we found significant bias in Google search results, sufficient to have shifted more than 6 million votes to Joe Biden.
Wow.
I supported him at the time. I don't anymore, but I supported him at the time. But I was outraged and found that, among other things, see, we know how to look at state elections and local elections now. Among other things, we found that in the 2020 election, Trump won 5 of the 13 swing states. We know how to cancel Google out now, so we can say, well, what would the numbers have been without Google's interference? And without Google's interference in 2020, Trump would have won 11 of
Wow.
those 13 swing states and easily would have won the presidency in the Electoral
Wow.
College.
Wow. And you could prove
You have
that.
the receipts.
We have the data. That absolutely correct. We have the data, and I've shared that with members of Trump's family whom I know, and so I know he's been made aware of this. 2022, we got even bigger. So 2022 midterms, we had 2,742 field agents in 10 swing states. Again, we found significant political bias. And I'll just give you a couple of numbers here to throw out here because it's so astonishing. We know how to factor Google out. So if we factor Google out of the 2022 midterms, in the Senate, where the Republicans ended up with a 2-seat minority, without Google's interference, the Republicans would now have between a 2 and 8-seat majority. House of Representatives, where they ended up with a very slim minority. In other words, there was no red wave that was predicted because Google stopped the red wave. If you want to see an article I published in the Epoch Times on this topic, you go to how Google stopped the red wave.com. That'll take you right to the Epoch Times piece, and they've kindly have eliminated their paywall from that so that people can read it for free. How Google stopped the red wave.com. And there was no red wave because Google stopped it. In the House of Representatives, where the Republicans ended up with a very slim majority, not enough to really control the House of Representatives, without Google, they would have ended up with a majority of between 27, I believe, and 59 seats. They would
Wow.
have had a solid majority.
That is
It's
just,
a totally different outcome, a
yeah.
vastly different outcome.
The
Well,
scope of this.
different country
Yeah.
Yes,
is what we're saying. Yeah.
exactly.
The scope of this is just absolutely staggering. It truly is.
I just wanted to make sure that we got to the ephemeral experiences that kind of what I understand to be this maybe the suggestive nature of Google.
Well, this is really the key to the whole thing here. So, 2018, there was a leak of emails from Google to the Wall Street Journal. And in that conversation that these Google employees were having, they were asking, how can we use ephemeral experiences? That's a quote, to change people's views about Trump's travel ban. Well, when I read that, my head just was spinning because we had been studying in controlled experiments already for more than 5 years. We had been studying the power that ephemeral experiences have to change people's opinions and votes. And here was actual evidence from the company itself internally showing that they're aware of the power of ephemeral experiences and that they use that power. And no, so what are they? That's the key here. What are they? Those are those brief experiences that we have most of the time when we're using the internet. They're brief, like you type in a search term and some search suggestions start flashing at you. Those are ephemeral. They appear very briefly, they impact you. Maybe you click on one of them and then they disappear like a puff of smoke. They're gone forever because they're not stored anywhere. That's what I mean by no paper trail. They're not stored anywhere. That's why Google, and to some extent other companies, uses ephemeral content to manipulate. Search results, they're ephemeral. When you're on YouTube, or when kids are on YouTube, that list of suggested videos, or that up next video that plays automatically, that's all ephemeral. It's not stored anywhere. We have developed methods for capturing all this. We are Google's worst nightmare, because they never thought that anyone would ever be able to capture all this fleeting content that they use for manipulations. And we have figured out over the years how to do it, and how to do it better and faster, and how to analyze the data as the data are coming in. And I am proud to say that as of this moment, we have preserved in recent months almost 55 million of these ephemeral experiences on multiple platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. And so we are accumulating a massive amount of evidence that documents what it is these companies are actually showing to real people. And the content is so disturbing. And if people go to americasdigitalshield.com, they can get a glimpse of what we call a dashboard, where you'll be able to see the data we're collecting in real time, including very disturbing images from YouTube going to our children. Americasdigitalshield.com. Now, this is still a mock-up, but it does have a big number at the top where it keeps scrolling very quickly. The numbers are changing because you're actually seeing the number of ephemeral experiences that we have been able to preserve. But around 10 days from now, this is going to go live. It'll be real with lots of real numbers. So right now, it's still just a glimpse of what's coming. But this is tremendously exciting. This is 11 years of work on our part, and we're finally getting there to having in place a system that will force these companies to stay out of our elections and stay the heck away from our children. That's the
Yes,
most important thing.
it is the most important thing. And I just have to say, Dr. Epstein, you and your team are, I just can't, you're here for such a time as this. I mean, just your specific skill set, a behavioral scientist who is also a programmer. I mean, it takes, that is just such a gift. And I don't think that's probably a set of skills that is very commonly found together. So I don't think it's by any accident that you are finding yourself in this work and fighting this good fight on behalf of our democracy, on behalf of our republic.
Thank you so much for saying that and for pointing that out. But there's a problem here too. The problem is that, again, my unique skill set and my interests and the very strong values that I have, seeking the truth and trying to defend our country and defend the free and fair election. The problem is that there's only one me. And yes, I have
Yeah.
a team of
Right.
wonderful.
Niches are a blessing and a curse.
Well, the point is, though, that this is disturbing. There should
Sure.
be dozens of research
Yeah.
teams around the world working on this, and there should be government officials working on this. And if something happens to me, what happens to this system? We're actually trying to work that out right now. Some way of making sure this will work, can continue if something does happen to me. And I have had some threats, some warnings, and
You're
you
going
know,
up against a very, very powerful machine.
well, it's the most powerful company in the history of the world. And so you could say what I'm doing is a little bit crazy. But the point is, I have wonderful young people who come to work for me from all over the country, and what we do is very exciting, very disturbing sometimes, very, very important. And so again, I hope people will go to mygoogleresearch.com, and if you have the ability, you have the resources, please consider sponsoring a field agent, which means making a commitment of $25 a month. It's fully tax deductible because we're a nonprofit 501c3 public charity, and we've been around since 2012. And the last couple of weeks, since we've started this campaign, we have gotten about 200 people so far to make this commitment to sponsor our field agents. Now you're probably wondering, well, why can't we just ask people to volunteer to be field agents? Maybe some people would do it for free. Well, we would love to accept volunteers. We have people proposing themselves as volunteers every day, and we can't take volunteers because if we did, Google would send us thousands of volunteers. And then they
And
would have
yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah,
we
Oh
know that
my
yeah.
gosh.
they've sent us people in the past.
Yeah, that would be a headache that you don't want, trying to siphon through and figure out who's really with you and who's not really with you. Well, the Quislings in the ranks for sure. We live in a country, Dr. Epstein, where we're founded on principles of free speech, free flow of information, the ability to access reliable, objective information, and yet we are in the midst of a monopoly in which one large big tech company is controlling our access to information, manipulating information. And as you said, ultimately, the goal is to re engineer the way we all think according to their values and not our values. And I find it therefore so important, the work that you are doing. It is just, I can't think, I don't know about you, Danielle, but I can't think of any work that is more fundamentally important, really ultimately, to the survival of the republic than the work that
Right.
Dr. Epstein is doing.
100%. And I think that the next logical question we have to ask you, Dr. Epstein, is how do we protect our own ability to get good information and to make truly informed decisions that are not biased?
Well, it's actually getting more difficult because we're talking about now the perfection of deep fakes, these fake videos, and we're gonna see more and more of deep fake audio content, especially in 2024. Fake textual content, some of it created by AIs. It's going to be harder and harder for us to find out what's real and what's not real, especially next year. Next year is going to be the year where all this stuff just is perfected. We're just not going to know what's going on, and you got that combined with all the suppression of content that Google and other companies are perpetrating. Three huge problems here related to the tech companies. The three big threats, I call them. One is the surveillance, because they're not only reading your Gmails and looking at every place you go to online through Chrome and everything you do on your Android phone. I mean everything you do on your Android phone, not just your locations, literally everything you read, everything you type, all of that is being recorded, and the phones themselves are listening to your conversations and recording those too. So we have the surveillance problem is number one. Number two is the censorship problem. Google is deciding what content people see or don't see in every country in the world outside of mainland China. And of course, China is doing all that all by itself. The government is doing it.
They
But in the
don't need
rest,
Google's help.
they don't need Google. Well, they have Google's help. That's the irony. Google has worked with the Chinese government to help them control their own people. But rest of the world, we're talking about Google, and to some extent Facebook and some other companies. Censorship is the second big threat, and the third one, which is what we study in our research, is manipulation. And there are so many techniques that they have available to them. We had a big breakthrough. I know we're running out of time, but I'm see if I can squeeze this in. We had a big breakthrough just about 2 weeks ago, another discovery. We have been studying the impact of biased content on people's opinions and their decision making and their voting. We've been studying that for more than 11 years. But we also were curious about the fact that Google personalizes content. They have so much information about everyone, and they don't send the same content to each person. They send individualized, customized content to individuals. And we've just finished our first set of experiments looking at what happens when we personalize content. So to some people, we send content that's from news sources or talk show hosts or celebrities that they trust. So another group is getting non-personalized content, but then there's the personalized content group. In the non-personalized group, we'll get a shift in voting preferences of 20%, which is pretty high if you think about it. But in the personalized content group, we got a shift of 70%.
Holy moly.
Wow.
That
Again,
is so stunning.
completely shocking to me. Completely shocking to me. They were talking about 3 times the impact. And that's what Google is actually doing. It means all these years where we've not been looking at the personalization part of it, we've been underestimating the power that they have. Now, how much power are we talking about? Okay, here we go. 2024, if there's no full size permanent monitoring system in place that can stop them, Google alone will be able to shift in the presidential election next year between 6.4 and 25.5 million votes.
Wow. One example, Dr. Epstein, of one aspect of what we're talking about here is this. My wife recently, just a couple of days ago, because we're doing some election work here in Louisiana, went to Google and was looking for a graphic image for a campaign. And she typed in people turning away in quotes. And all that she found on Google on the first 2 pages was information about people turning away from Donald Trump. This was not even a this was not even a political search. She was just looking for a graphic image. And I know that your ideology is not aligned with Donald Trump's. However, it is an example of what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely. See, that's what we study, and when you see something like that happen with your wife, that's called an anecdote. Okay, it's not admissible in court. It's not considered evidence. It's an anecdote. But when we collect this information, it's evidence because we're collecting this information by the millions, hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos, millions of searches, tens of millions of searches, and looking at the search results, preserving them. Now that's evidence. And so the key to this is putting in place a permanent 24/7 system that's looking over the shoulders with their permission of real voters, real children, capturing all this ephemeral content that Google thought no one would ever be able to capture, preserving it, archiving it, and having it available to bring to courts, to bring to federal agencies such as the Federal Election Commission, to bring to parenting groups, which can apply enormous pressure on a company like Google. And that's what we are doing. So I hope you will work with me not just today, but in the future, in sending people to mygoogleresearch.com and to sponsor one of our field agents, because these are real heroes. They get no credit. We have to hide their identities, just like the Nielsen family. The Nielsen company has to hide the identities of the Nielsen families that they use to get the TV ratings. So we have to protect their identities, and they're allowing us to collect data through their computers, which is the only way we can see what these companies are showing to real people.
Right.
And we will absolutely include all of the web addresses that you shared with us in our show notes, and definitely encourage our listeners to go to mygoogleresearch.com and support the work that you're doing. I know we just have a few more seconds with you. If you could give us some practical measures that people can take to protect their own privacy and, get the results that we're actually seeking whenever we go online.
The place to go there is to an article that I published online, and you can get to it at myprivacytips.com. That's myprivacytips.com. That essay begins with the following sentence: I have not received a targeted ad on my mobile phone or computer since 2014. And that's true. So in other words, there are ways to use technology, and for your kids to use technology in a way that will protect privacy, and will give you more honest kinds of content. And you have to learn how to do that. It's not that hard. It's just that people just don't think when they're using the online content, they just automatically use Google as their search engine, which you positively should not use because it's a surveillance platform. It's just built for one purpose, and that's to trick you into giving up all kinds of personal information, which is then used to not just to sell you things, but it's used to manipulate you. People use Gmail without thinking. Gmail is a surveillance platform. Don't use it. Stop using it. There are ways there are better email systems out there that don't track you, that encrypt your data, that protect it. Texting, people don't think about it, but all those texts that you send are being monitored. There's alternatives. There's a very good app you can use that's developed by a nonprofit organization called Signal that encrypts the texts and protects your privacy when you're texting. I could go on, but if you go to myprivacytips.com, you'll see what I do to protect myself and my family. And, I urge everyone to just kind of get up to speed on these issues. This is your incoming governor, Jeff Landry, who's been helping me for a long time. He understands these things. There are very few of our leaders who do, but you're lucky in Louisiana. You have a man there who understands these issues, and that's good. That's going to be good for your state. And I think we're probably going to end up doing very extensive monitoring in Louisiana to protect people from that state. But most people out there don't think about these issues. They don't know about these issues. Okay, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. No, really, stop it.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to learn these things because this is important. This is about what your kids are learning, what they're believing. A lot of crazy ideas are coming to them from these companies.
Yeah.
And a preferred search engine.
Yes. And parents are not even aware of it very often.
And if you had a preferred search engine, just for listeners who need to, get off of Google immediately.
Well, by far the best search engine right now is called Brave. You can get it for free at brave.com. I know the owner and developer of the Brave company. He's again a very courageous American who's taken on Google. So Brave is the best browser. It's private, does not track you. Brave has its own search engine now, so you can use Brave for your search engine. It's extremely good. It's all I use. Again, if you go to myprivacytips.com, you'll see what I do, how I use the internet, how I use technology in a way that protects my privacy. There are even phones. We have secure phones that don't listen to you and that don't track your location. All of this is possible, and these companies really, these people should be ashamed of themselves. They have gone wild. They have gone wild in the way that they surveil us and censor content and manipulate us. They've just gone wild. They're out of control. We've got to work together to stop them.
We do. And it's such a pleasure and so gratifying to have your voice on the public stage. We are going to do all we can to continue to expand your platform here in Louisiana and beyond. And because this really is, as I said a few minutes ago, there is no more important work being done, and the survival of the republic as a free republic really is at stake. If you can stifle information and manipulate the information that people have access to on such a grand scale, then there is no such thing as an informed public anymore. And without an informed public, ultimately your republic can't survive. Dr. Epstein, it's been a pleasure to have you.
Well, Chris and Danielle, thank you so much for letting me speak to your audience, to your listeners, and just for your for your moral support. Because what we do is it's exciting, but it's also a little scary. It's very challenging, and so any kind of support we get means a lot to us. And I do hope that your listeners will consider sponsoring one of our field agents, because this system has to get much, much larger. And the only way really that's going to happen is if tens of thousands of Americans will step up and will sponsor a field agent. Again, you can't volunteer to be one, unfortunately, because then Google would send us a lot of people. But you can support people who have signed up and who are helping us now 24 hours a day through their, by allowing us access to their computers. By the way, we preserve their privacy. We don't do what Google does. So when their data are transmitted to us, there's no identifying information. We preserve the privacy of their children. We analyze data only in aggregate. So I want to emphasize this, that we do not do what Google does. We preserve people's privacy. We respect people's privacy. And so should Google and other tech companies. What they're doing is wrong.
It is. And just thank you so much for that, Dr. Epstein. And I also just want to say that we'd love to stay in touch with you as you are doing more work in Louisiana or having new developments and breakthroughs in your work. Please keep us informed. Know this is a place that you're welcome to come back anytime.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, both of you, and I hope to have some further contact with you.
Perfect. Have a wonderful day and have a safe trip to Mar-a-Lago.
Thank you. Yep, heading there later tonight. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Chris, I don't even know what to say. I mean, this man basically single-handedly has uncovered the enemy of free speech, freedom of thought, and the free flow of information that's been under our noses for the last 20 years.
It absolutely, for the third time, there is no more important work being done anywhere in the world than the work that Dr. Robert Epstein is doing. And we have to encourage people to do everything that they can to support him and his work. If Google has the power unchecked to censor and stifle the free flow of information throughout the world, as they are doing, in order to manipulate public opinion, then that is profoundly alarming for the future of not only our country, but for the future of liberty throughout the world.
It is. And I was so encouraged to hear that he has been in close touch with Jeff Landry, that Jeff Landry's got his eyes on this and is not going to be a newcomer, not someone that's shying away from this. I think we maybe spoke with him off air briefly about the Missouri versus Biden case and the fact that his work may either feature in that or inform that case. So I think that we can expect that this relationship hopefully also continues with Liz Murrell's office, should she get elected in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, there are some really, really good signs of things that can happen in the future to assist Dr. Epstein to raise public awareness and really to put a stop to this, because it can't continue. And as I said earlier, I'm so thankful that he is there. And I'm also thankful that we here at the State of Freedom, Danielle, have a platform, an increasingly broad platform, to bring guests like Dr. Epstein on, so that he has a platform here in Louisiana to spread his message and his vision. And so to that extent, I want to thank our supporters to the State of Freedom and encourage continued support of our program.
Yes, absolutely. And to support the work that LeCag does for candidates and for really Louisiana First constitutionalist candidates, our listeners can visit lecag.org. And Chris, give them the P.O. Box.
P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70896. We are creating a government, and particularly a legislature in Louisiana, that is responsive to the needs and the concerns of the citizens, where our citizens are no longer disillusioned or despairing about the extent to which their legislators and their leaders actually represent their concerns and interests. And that's what we're doing, returning the legislature to the citizens. Your support to LeCag is so critically important to help us continue to build our infrastructure in order to do that.
Yes, and if you'd also like to support the work that we're doing here at the State of Freedom, bringing great content to you several times a week, you can do that at freedomstate.us. And I'd also like to mention a new opportunity for any listener who may be already investing in precious metals. You may have heard me mention this once before, but it is a new opportunity. And Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market. It's actually a dealer cost. So, I mean, you really can't get better than that. And you can refer Metal Stacks as well for an additional income. If you are just interested in purchasing metals, you can visit metalstacks.com/DWalker. That would help me out. I'll get the commission. And Metal Stacks retail prices are extremely competitive. They beat the big sites and have no credit card fees and no minimums. So if you're interested in learning about the business aspect, you can just email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us.
What a tremendous, tremendous opportunity that is. Well, Danielle, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. The State of Freedom is broadening across Louisiana, revolutionizing the way political advocacy is done in our state. And with God's grace and courage each day, we will take another step to preserve the state of freedom in Louisiana and beyond.
Amen. Have a great one, Chris. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to the State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.